governments will find themselves in my statement. All individuals have a right to express freely. Anyone arrested for peacefully protesting or expressing his or her views should be considered to have been arbitrarily detained. The sustained clampdown on political dissent can only fuel the tension and help lead to the protests. The ICJ expresses its general concern about the fate of those that have been or may be arrested and urges the governments to treat all detainees according to internationally established standards, including by ensuring that they are not subjected to torture or ill treatment and that they have access to their families and to others from the outside world. Anyone arrested on suspicion of committing violence should be charged with a recognizable criminal offense and tried fairly or released. It is essential that independent human rights experts be allowed to investigate the human rights crisis, including allegations that peaceful protesters have been killed and that other excessive force has been used by the security forces and that protesters have been arbitrarily arrested and detained. It is in a public interest to swiftly clarify exactly the extent of any human rights violations. In conclusion, it is the ICJ's views that the Tibetan people have a right to self-determination and that a referendum of the Tibetan people to determine the future status of the region would significantly contribute to resolving the political conflict in Tibet. And with that, I thank you.
Thank you. I will give the floor to a representative of the Association for World Education for a joint statement.
Monsieur le Président.
President, under item 8 of this agenda, on behalf of the Association for World Education and the International Humanist and Ethical Union, I should like to draw your attention to what is happening in the world at the moment. We can see that the silence of the Council hitherto has been deafening, and that the debate this afternoon have demonstrated that if...
We'll give the floor to the next speaker, Reporters Without Borders.
Je pense qu'il y a quelque chose.
Madam. Madam. Thank you. I'd like to give the floor to the next speaker, a Reporter Without Borders. You have the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
President, I should like to start by saying that I regret the amount of freedom of expression given to the previous speaker.
While this Council debates implementation of the Vienna Declaration and including regional arrangements for the promotion and protection of universally recognized human rights such as freedom of expression and religion, in the Asia-Pacific region, in at least one major state of the region, as well as others, free expression is stifled. The outside world is deprived of independent information on violations of human rights. Promises of improvements in respect for human rights and press freedom have come to naught. Reporters Without Borders is outraged by the methods being used to obstruct foreign journalists trying to cover these situations, and calls for the immediate and unconditional return of the foreign press to the affected areas. After ridding these regions of undesirable observers, foreign journalists and tourists, as well as local journalists, Mr. President, the security forces are crushing the protests without the international community being able to watch. For the repression in Tibet and elsewhere to end, the United Nations must demand the return of all journalists and dispatch independent observers to these areas. This would be the best way, Mr. President, for this Council to promote and protect human rights in the region and contribute to the implementation of the Vienna Declaration and Program of Action. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. The last speaker on